My daughter has taken my villa and handed it over to her husband's family, declaring that it now belongs to them. This place is off limits for you. I smiled and nodded, concealing my fury. But as they arrived to settle in, I had a surprise in store for them that would linger in their memories forever. They were taken aback by the sight before them. A twist of betrayal ignited a quest for revenge, as justice emerged from an unforeseen source, altering the course of lives forever. Before we move forward, we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel and share your location in the comments below. I shut the car door with a decisive thud and picked up my weekend bag, envisioning the peaceful moments that awaited me by the lake. 3 days of tranquility at my villa, just what I craved after another demanding week of overseeing the San Diego properties. The 2-hour drive from the city proved to be worthwhile, as the sight of Lake Tahoe's crystal-clear waters was a breathtaking reward. Yet an unsettling feeling lingered in the air. 2 silhouettes in crisp white bathrobes lingered on my secluded terrace. Warm coffee mugs cradled in their hands, steam curling into the air. My daughter rested against the window.
Mira, pero ¿por qué no haces eso? Y después cuando yo trataba las cosas siempre me voy para el cuando yo trataba las cosas siempre me voy para el
Kelly stood tall.
y la otra vez, siento mi
In my teenage moments had she regarded me with such icy indifference. "Dad? You can't stay here," she exclaimed, her voice piercing and filled with urgency. "Palmer and I are organizing a heartfelt weekend getaway." I blinked, convinced I must have misunderstood. This was my sanctuary. The document bore my name, purchased with the hard-earned money I made constructing much of the commercial district in San Diego. Every tile, every fixture, every piece of furniture was carefully chosen by Elizabeth and me. "But Kelly, this is my villa." I began, my voice fading as the ridiculousness of needing to assert this evident truth struck me. She placed her mug down with a decisive clink, her indifference palpable. "We arrived before anyone else, and we have no intention of going anywhere." Palmer muttered something indistinct, but Kelly dismissed him with a wave. With a swift, irritated motion, she tightened her bathrobe as it gaped open just a bit. "Sweetheart." "I drove for 2 hours," I said cautiously, moving closer to the front door. "I simply wished to enjoy the weekend. Leave us alone." Kelly's voice escalated to a shout. "You're simply an obstacle in the path." The words struck me with an intensity that felt almost tangible. This was my sanctuary, my haven, the place where Elizabeth and I envisioned our future, where I found solace in her memory. I found myself frozen in place, my bag resting at my feet, as I gazed at my only child, who was casting a fierce look at me from the terrace of our home. Palmer avoided my gaze entirely, his face a deep shade of crimson peeking out from beneath the collar of his bathrobe. At 28, Kelly was treating me like an unwelcome intruder on my own land, commanding me to leave as if I didn't belong. The girl who once nestled into my lap for bedtime tales, who referred to me as Daddy until she reached 16, who wept in my embrace at her mother's funeral. Elizabeth's voice lingers in my thoughts, urging me to be patient with her. She's still navigating her grief. Allow her the time she needs. For 3 long years, I had offered her my unwavering patience, my deep understanding, and my relentless efforts to adapt to her ever-changing moods and expectations. And this was the outcome of my devotion. "All right," I heard myself say, the word lingering like bitterness. "All right. I'll go." I lowered myself to retrieve my bag, my knees protesting with a weight of feeling. At 62, I found myself being treated like an afterthought by my own daughter. "Good," Kelly exclaimed. "Next time, please call ahead. Next time, please give me a call before using my property." I made my way back to my car, my legs shaky and uncertain each step, feeling like a withdrawal from a conflict I hadn't realized I was meant to engage in. From behind, Kelly's voice reached me gentler this time as she chatted with Palmer about their dinner plans. The engine roared to life with a seamless hum, a testament to German craftsmanship, dependable as ever, in stark contrast to the unpredictability of family, it seems. I eased out of the driveway, my fingers clutching the steering wheel with such intensity that my knuckles turned pale. In my rearview mirror, I noticed Kelly and Palmer sinking back into their chairs, as if they were already dismissing my presence. My daughter lifted her coffee mug, a gesture that could have been a toast, or perhaps a poignant farewell. The journey back to San Diego unfolded before me, vast and desolate. I'd be driving home in a state of despair, feeling like a failure, just as Elizabeth always feared I would, just as I often found myself doing. On a quiet Monday evening, I sat in my study, cradling a cup of lukewarm coffee and reflecting on the leftovers of a solitary dinner. 3 days had slowly passed since the shameful events at the villa on Friday. On Saturday, I flinched at every ring of the phone, hoping for Kelly to reach out with some sort of explanation. Sunday unveiled the unsettling truth that perhaps I had always been too hasty to give in. The piercing ring of the phone shattered my concentration. Father Kelly's voice lacked the warmth I had longed for. Chilly, pragmatic. Pay close attention. Palmer and I have come to a decision. The villa has now been passed down to his parents. My coffee mug turned into a block of ice just as I was about to take a sip. Excuse me, Kelly, could you clarify what you mean Carl and Margaret Thompson have made this place their own? Her words fell like heavy pebbles into calm waters. You are no longer allowed to go there. The leather chair let out a soft groan as I leaned in closer. Kelly, have you completely lost your senses? You can't simply take what belongs to me. Indeed, I have the ability, and I am taking action. Her voice cut through the air like a finely honed instrument. It's not something you utilize much, and they truly require adequate shelter. 3 decades of relentless 12-hour days dedicated to nurturing my construction business raced through my thoughts. Each struggle for permits, every challenging client, and all the sacrifices Elizabeth and I endured to make that dream home by the lake a reality. This is my villa. The words burst forth from me with unexpected intensity. I spent 30 years striving to purchase that home. Kelly's laugh was devoid of any joy. Your behavior is incredibly self-centered. After all we've sacrificed for you since our mother passed away. Something broke. All that you've done for me, my voice climbed to meet hers. I covered the costs of your wedding, your car, your college loans, and even that stylish apartment deposit. That's what fathers do, she interrupted me. Moreover, you find yourself in a place of solitude as the years have passed. What could you possibly want with a villa of that size, lonely and aged? The words struck me with the force of a punch, yet rather than collapsing, I sensed a resilience forming deep within my heart. Elizabeth's soft voice echoed in her mind, reminding her of the importance of patience. Yet she had never witnessed her daughter express such deliberate malice. Those are Kelly's parents, Palmer. Utterly unfamiliar to me, they've become family. And in contrast to you, they'll truly value what they receive. My fingers clenched around the phone, turning my knuckles pale with tension. No. The quiet lingered in the air, heavy and unbroken. I could almost sense her astonishment buzzing through the line. Could you please repeat that I firmly told you no, Kelly? No, that's not the answer. You simply cannot refuse my request. That villa is truly beneath you, don't you think? Her calm facade finally shattered, exposing a darker truth beneath. Palmer's parents are facing significant financial challenges while you seem to be holding on to property that you hardly ever use. The irony seared through her thoughts. In the wake of Elizabeth's passing, I found myself returning more often, drawn to the sanctuary of our happiest memories. Kelly was fully aware of this. They can discover their own housing solutions, I remarked, taken aback by the calmness in my own tone. It's hard to fathom the extent of your self-centeredness lately. Kelly's voice rose, teetering on the edge of panic. Your mother would be disappointed in you. That went beyond all boundaries. Elizabeth would have never condoned this act of theft, this exploitation of a grieving husband's affection for his sole child. Your mother would be appalled by the person you've turned into, I murmured softly. Kelly's intake of breath was audible. How dare you? I hung up. For the first time in 3 years, I had hung up on my daughter. The phone sat silent in my lap as my heart hammered against my ribs. Outside San Diego's evening traffic hummed its familiar rhythm. But inside my study, everything had changed. The phone rang again immediately. Kelly's name flashed on the display. I turned it off. Sleep remained elusive that night. I sat in my leather chair until well past midnight, replaying every word of Kelly's outrageous demand. The silence in my study felt different now, not peaceful but charged with possibility. By morning, something fundamental had shifted inside me. Tuesday brought clarity with the sunrise. I made coffee, retrieved my laptop, and began researching property law with the methodical precision that had built my construction empire. California statutes, transfer requirements, documentation needs information. I'd learned decades ago but never imagined needing against my own daughter. The phone buzzed with text messages throughout the day. Kelly, of course. Dad, we need to talk about yesterday. Then don't be stubborn about this. Finally, Palmer's parents are coming to see the villa this weekend. I deleted each message without responding. Wednesday morning, I drove to my attorney's office downtown. Marcus Chen had handled my business transactions for 15 years, a sharp mind wrapped in diplomatic courtesy. His corner office overlooked the harbor floor-to-ceiling windows, framing sailboats that danced across the bay. Fred. Marcus rose from behind his mahogany desk, extending a firm handshake. Good to see you. How can I help? I settled into the familiar client chair, the leather still creaking, in exactly the same spot as always. I need to discuss property protection strategies. Marcus raised an eyebrow, but remained professionally neutral. Commercial or residential, residential. The Lake Tahoe Villa. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Someone is attempting to claim ownership rights they don't possess, family member. The question hit like a diagnosis I wasn't ready to hear. Yes. Marcus nodded slowly, his expression growing more serious. That complicates things. Family disputes over property can get messy quickly. What are my options? Several. Marcus pulled out a legal pad, his pen already moving. First, we ensure your ownership documentation is ironclad. Second, we can establish additional protective measures. Trusts, LLC structures, whatever makes sense for your situation. How quickly depends on complexity. Basic documentation. Review a few days more, sophisticated protection, 2 to 3 weeks. I thought about Kelly's text message. Palmer's parents coming this weekend. I may not have that long. Marcus set down his pen, studying my face with the intensity that made him excellent at reading clients and juries alike. Fred is someone trying to force you off your own property. The question hung between us like an accusation. When I nodded, Marcus's professional demeanor hardened into something more personal. Then we start immediately. I'll need copies of all deeds, transfer documents, anything related to the property's ownership history. I can have everything to you by tomorrow morning. Good. Marcus made another note. And Fred, document everything. Conversations, threats, attempts at coercion. Contemporary records matter in these situations. Threats. Coercion, that legal terms for what my daughter had tried to do to me. The elevator descended toward the parking garage, each floor marking my distance from the life I'd known just days ago. At the lobby level, my reflection caught in the polished steel doors. A man who looked older than his 62 years, but with something new in his eyes, determination. My phone rang as I reached the car. Kelly again. This time I answered. Finally, her voice carried the sharp edge of someone accustomed to getting her way. "We need to resolve this childish nonsense. The only nonsense," I said calmly, "is your belief that you can steal my property." "Steal? How dare you use that word with me? What would you call taking someone's home without permission?" Kelly's pause lasted longer than usual. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted to something more calculated. "Dad Palmer's parents really are struggling financially. Margaret lost her job last month and Carl's pension barely covers their rent. A manipulation technique I recognized from her teenage years. Appeal to sympathy when demands failed. That's unfortunate. But it doesn't give them rights to my villa. You could be generous. Show some family spirit. Like the family spirit you showed me Friday at the villa." Another pause. "We were surprised to see you there. At my own property, you should have called first." The circular logic was dizzying. "Kelly, I'm not giving anyone my villa. That's final." "Fine," her voice cracked like a whip. "But Palmer's parents are still coming to look at it this Saturday. They've already made travel arrangements." The line went dead. I stood beside my car. Phone still pressed my ear, listening to the dial tone. Above me, San Diego's afternoon sky stretched endless and blue. The same sky that had watched me build everything I owned through decades of honest work. Saturday was 4 days away. The dial tone continued its mechanical hum. While I sat frozen in my leather chair, phone still pressed against my ear. Kelly's words echoed in the sudden silence. "Palmer's parents are still coming to look at it this Saturday. Look at it as if my villa were already theirs." Slowly, I lowered the phone and set it on the side table next to my forgotten coffee mug. The liquid had gone cold hours ago, a thin film forming across its dark surface. Outside, San Diego's evening traffic provided its familiar soundtrack. But inside my study, everything felt different. How long had this been happening? When exactly had I stopped being Kelly's father and become her personal bank account? The memories came flooding back with painful clarity. Kelly's wedding 2 years ago, she'd called it needing help with expenses. But I'd written a check for $15,000 without even asking for a budget breakdown. The casual way she'd accepted it, like I was an ATM dispensing expected cash, rather than her father making a significant sacrifice. Then Palmer's car troubles 8 months later. "Dad, we really need reliable transportation," Kelly had said. Her voice carried an articulate tone of wind to mother her face at the same. A $25,000 new SUV purchased and delivered within a week. Shaken my Elizabeth's still processing losing me. But Elizabeth had been dead for 3 years now, and Kelly's processing had morphed into something else entirely. Something that looked suspiciously like calculated exploitation of a grieving father's desperate need to maintain connection with his only child. I stood up from my chair legs, stiff from sitting motionless for too long. My study walls displayed decades of business achievements. Awards, photographs with clients, framed contracts for major construction projects, evidence of a man who'd built an empire through careful negotiation and strategic thinking. Why had I become such a pushover in my personal life? The answer sat in a silver frame on my desk, Elizabeth's photograph taken during our last vacation to the villa. She was laughing at something I'd said, her gray hair catching the Lake Tahoe sunlight. In the 3 years since her death, I'd said yes to every one of Kelly's demands, terrified that saying no might drive away the last family I had left. But family didn't steal from each other. Family didn't manipulate grief into financial opportunity. Kelly's graduate school expenses had totaled nearly $40,000 over 2 years. I'd paid every bill without question, even when she'd switched majors twice and extended her program. Her thank you calls had grown shorter and less frequent, eventually disappearing altogether, except when she needed something else. pattern recognition, a skill that had served me well in construction, bidding wars, and contract negotiations, applied the same analytical approach to Kelly's behavior, and the pattern became crystal clear. Each request had been larger than the last. Each expression of gratitude had been smaller. Each interaction had felt more transactional, less personal. I thought I was being a good father. Instead, I'd been training her to see me as a resource rather than a person. The wall clock chimed 8 o'clock. It sounded sharp in the quiet room. Palmer's parents would arrive at my villa in 4 days, expecting to claim ownership of a property I'd spent 30 years earning. They'd probably brought measuring tape and furniture catalogs, already planning how to rearrange my life's work to suit their comfort. Elizabeth's advice about patience had been sound when Kelly was genuinely grieving, but grief didn't last 3 years. Grief didn't plot to steal property from the person who'd provided endless financial support. Grief didn't hang up on a father after demanding he surrender his home to strangers. This wasn't grief anymore. This was greed. I picked up Elizabeth's photograph, studying her familiar smile. She'd loved Kelly deeply, but she'd also been the disciplinarian in our household. Elizabeth would never have tolerated this level of disrespect, this casual dismissal of my rights and feelings. "What would you want me to do?" I asked her image quietly. The answer came immediately in my own voice rather than hers. "Stop being a victim." Sleep proved impossible. I'd gone through my usual bedtime routine: shower, teeth, the sports section from Sunday's paper. But when my head hit the pillow at 11, my mind refused to quiet. Instead of sheep, I found myself counting days. Monday, April 28th, Tuesday, the 29th, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, May 4th. 6 days. By midnight, I'd abandoned any pretense of rest. Lying flat on my back, hands clasped behind my head, I stared at the ceiling and let my mind work the problem like I used to work construction contracts. Break down the components. Identify the critical path. Calculate resources and timeline. Kelly had made a crucial tactical error. She'd given me an exact deadline. In 30 years of project management, I'd learned that the client who reveals their timeline first usually loses the negotiation. Sunday, May 4th meant she was working backward from some fixed constraint, probably Palmer's parents' moving schedule or lease expiration. The digital clock glowed 12:47 a.m. when the solution framework began forming. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about strategy. And strategy was something I understood. Every difficult client, every impossible deadline, every contractor who'd tried to squeeze me for extra money, they'd all taught me valuable lessons about human nature and leverage points. Rule 1: never negotiate from desperation. Kelly assumed I was desperate to preserve our relationship, which had been true for 3 years. But desperate men don't hang up on their daughters. Desperate men don't hire attorneys. Rule 2: information advantage wins deals. Kelly thought she knew everything about me, the grieving widower who couldn't say no to his daughter's demands. She had no idea about my conversation with Marcus Chen, no knowledge of the documentation review already underway. Rule 3: timing determines everything. 6 days felt rushed from her perspective, probably leaving little room for contingency planning. From my perspective, 6 days was plenty of time to prepare something elegant. I thought about Frank Morrison, the developer who'd tried to muscle me out of the Harbor District project back in '98. Morrison had used intimidation tactics, threatening legal action, spreading rumors about my company's reliability. Sound familiar? I'd let him think his strategies were working, while quietly securing contracts with 3 of his biggest subcontractors. When his project timeline collapsed, I'd been ready with solutions. At premium rates, the parallel was almost perfect. Kelly thought she was pressuring me into surrender. Instead, she was giving me time to build the perfect trap. My phone buzzed with the text message. Kelly again, of course. Dad Palmer's parents found a moving company for Sunday. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. The presumption was breathtaking. She'd already arranged movers for my property. The sheer audacity actually impressed me from a business perspective. Always act as if the deal is already closed, even when you're bluffing. But I'd seen this move before. Tony Castellanos had tried the same tactic in 2003, showing up to my office with architectural plans for modifications to a property he didn't yet own. Tony had learned an expensive lesson about the difference between confidence and ownership rights. Kelly was about to learn the same lesson. I deleted her message and set the phone aside. My mind was clicking through possibilities, now the same methodical process I'd used to turn a small contracting business into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Resources timeline, desired outcome, acceptable risks. Resources substantial, financial assets, legal representation, 30 years of business relationships. And one crucial advantage Kelly didn't know about my neighbor Derek's technical expertise. Derek owed me a favor from last winter, when I'd helped him deal with a flooding issue in his basement. Timeline: 6 days to implement Sunday execution. Desired outcome: complete reversal of Kelly's power position, not just stopping her theft, but ensuring she understood the consequences of treating me like a victim. The clock read 1:23 a.m. when I finally smiled in the darkness. Elizabeth used to say I had a ruthless streak that emerged when someone pushed me too far. She'd seen it with competitors who tried to undercut my bids through questionable tactics, with suppliers who'd attempted to breach contract terms. "You're too nice 95% of the time," she told me once, "but that other 5% is absolutely terrifying." Kelly had never seen that 5%. She was about to get a masterclass. By 2 in the morning, the basic framework was solid. Tomorrow I'd approach Derek about the technical aspects. Wednesday, I'd finalize details with Marcus. Thursday and Friday for preparation and positioning. Saturday night, I'd drive up to Lake Tahoe one final time as the accommodating father Kelly expected me to be. Sunday morning would bring a very different Fred Martinez to the villa, one she'd never met before. Tuesday morning brought the clarity that only decisive action can provide. I woke at 7 feeling more energized than I had in months, showered, made coffee, and walked over to Derek's house at exactly 9 o'clock. My neighbor answered the door in his usual work-from-home uniform, faded jeans, and a Silicon Valley startup t-shirt. Behind wire-rimmed glasses, his eyes held the slightly unfocused look of someone who'd been staring at code for hours. "Fred, everything okay?" Derek stepped aside, gesturing me into his home office where 3 monitors displayed lines of programming text. "Actually, I need your help with a creative technical project." I settled into the chair beside his desk, noting the impressive array of gadgets and cables that filled every surface. Derek's eyebrows lifted with immediate interest. "What kind of project? You've definitely got my attention." "Home automation. Something involving motion sensors, voice assistants, maybe some lighting effects." I paused, watching his reaction. A surprise for some unexpected guests. "Oh, this sounds fascinating." Derek swiveled his chair to face me fully. "Like a haunted house setup, smart home integration with theatrical elements." "Close enough, exactly. The kind of thing that would really make an impression." Derek's grin was infectious. "Fred, this sounds like something from a horror movie." "When do we start?" 2 hours later, we were loading Derek's SUV with enough technology to outfit a small research facility. Motion detectors, programmable LED light strips, wireless speakers, hidden cameras, water flow controllers, and a tablet loaded with home automation software. The drive to Lake Tahoe flew by as Derek explained the possibilities. "We can program cascading responses. Motion triggers lights. Lights trigger voice responses. Voice responses trigger water systems. The whole house becomes an interactive experience. How sophisticated can we make it? Sky's the limit." I'm thinking motion sensors in every room. Voice assistant programmed with custom messages. Lighting that responds to movement patterns. Derek was practically bouncing in his seat. We could even add facial recognition if you want to target specific guests. Interesting. Let's start with the basics and see how much time we have. We reached the villa just after noon. Derek whistled appreciatively as we pulled into the driveway. Beautiful place, Fred. Your mysterious guests are going to get quite a welcome. The installation process revealed Derek's true expertise. Within minutes, he'd mapped out sensor placement throughout the villa, identified optimal camera angles, and begun programming the tablet that would control everything. Motion detector here in the entryway, he explained, mounting a device no larger than a smoke alarm. The moment someone walks in, it triggers the living room lights to start this strobing pattern, while the voice assistant announces you are not the owners of this house. Leave immediately. And if they don't leave, Derek's eyes gleamed. Phase 2. Motion in the living room triggers every faucet and shower in the house to turn on full blast. Plus, the voice messages get more emphatic. We worked steadily through the afternoon. Derek ran cables behind baseboards, programmed response sequences, and tested each component with the precision of someone who genuinely loved technical challenges. I assisted where I could, amazed by the sophistication of what we were creating. The beauty of this system, Derek said, adjusting a hidden camera behind a bookshelf, is that it's completely legal. Motion-activated lighting voice assistants, automated water systems, all standard smart home features just creatively programmed. By 3 o'clock, every room contained at least 2 motion sensors connected to lighting effects that would strobe and flash in patterns Derek described as deeply unsettling. The voice assistant had been programmed with increasingly aggressive messages triggered by continued motion detection. Water systems throughout the house would activate randomly after the initial motion trigger. Let's test it, Derek suggested, tablet in walk into the living room. I stepped through the entryway. Immediately lights began flashing in a disorienting pattern, while the voice assistant proclaimed, "This property belongs to Fred Martinez. You are trespassing. Leave now." Derek appeared beside me, grinning broadly. "Keep moving around." After 30 seconds of continued motion, every light in the house began strobing. While the voice changed to warning security system activated, authorities have been notified. Vacate immediately. The sound of rushing water echoed from the kitchen and bathrooms as faucets turned on automatically. "Brilliant," I said, genuinely impressed. "Absolutely brilliant." Derek shut down the test sequence, looking enormously pleased with himself. The system has battery backup, so they can't just flip the main breaker, and everything's controlled remotely through your phone. You can monitor the cameras, adjust settings, even activate manual overrides. As we packed up our tools, Derek's curiosity finally got the better of him. "So when exactly are these mysterious guests arriving Sunday morning?" "And they're really not expecting this." I thought about Kelly's text message arranging movers for my property. "Let's just say they're planning to make themselves very comfortable in my home." Derek's laughter echoed across the empty villa. "Well, they're definitely going to get a warm welcome." Wednesday morning brought Derek to my door at 8:30, arms full of equipment I hadn't seen the day before. His eyes sparkled with the fervor of someone who'd spent the night dreaming up improvements to an already impressive system. I had some ideas, he announced, hefting a compact projector and speaker array. What if they try to shut off the main power? Good question. One I'd been mulling over during my own restless night. "What do you suggest? Industrial batteries hidden in the basement, enough juice to run everything for a week." Derek's grin was infectious. Plus, I brought projectors for wall effects, dancing, shadows, moving figures. This is going to be legendary. The drive to Lake Tahoe passed quickly as Derek outlined motion-triggered projections of ghostly silhouettes, sound systems, mysterious guests. As we pulled into the villa's driveway, we worked with focus and intensity throughout the morning. Derek installed projectors in the main rooms, programming them to cast moving shadows across walls and ceilings. The effect, even in daylight, was genuinely unsettling. Dark figures that seemed to pace behind the furniture shapes that flickered just beyond peripheral vision. The beauty of this setup, Derek explained while calibrating a wall-mounted unit, is psychological impact. The human brain tries to find patterns in random stimuli. These projections will make them see things that aren't really there. Meanwhile, I focused on the audio enhancement. Derek had brought professional-grade speakers barely larger than smoke detectors, which he positioned throughout every room. The sound library he'd assembled was impressively disturbing. Footsteps in empty hallways, whispered voices creaking floorboards, whined that seemed to blow through closed windows. The system will layer these sounds randomly, Derek noted, fine-tuning the audio levels. Sometimes just one effect, sometimes multiple sounds overlapping. Keeps them guessing what's real. By noon, we'd transformed the peaceful villa into something that belonged in a psychological thriller. The backup battery system, cleverly hidden beneath the main electrical panel, would ensure uninterrupted operation regardless of attempts to disable the power supply. What about a warning sign, I suggested as we paused for lunch? Something to set the right tone when they arrive. Derek's eyes lit up. Brilliant. How about welcome to the house of the future? Enter at your own risk. Makes it sound like some kind of tech demonstration. We spent an hour crafting the perfect sign, professional-looking, mounted prominently on the front door. To casual observers, it would suggest an elaborate smart home showcase. To our unwelcome visitors, it would provide fair warning of what awaited inside. The afternoon was devoted to comprehensive testing and final calibration. Derek walked through each room while I monitored the control tablet, watching as motion sensors triggered cascading responses across every system simultaneously. Motion detected in entryway, Derek called out. Lights activating, projection system engaging, audio sequence starting. The strobe lights pulsed in disorienting patterns while ghostly shadows danced across walls. The voice assistant announced its stern warning about trespassing, while eerie whispers seemed to emanate from empty corners. Water began flowing from faucets and showers throughout the house. How long will this sequence run? I asked, genuinely impressed by the coordination continuously, while motion is detected with 30-second intervals if they try to hide or stay still. Derek beamed with professional pride. The system assumes anyone remaining inside is either authorized or stubborn. It adjusts accordingly. We conducted final tests in every room, ensuring seamless integrations between all components. The projectors synchronized perfectly with sound effects. Motion sensors covered every possible path through the house. The backup power systems remained invisible yet accessible for maintenance. As evening approached, Derek made final adjustments to the smartphone interface that would allow me to monitor everything remotely. Live camera feeds, system status updates, manual override controls, complete operational command from anywhere with internet access. This is honestly the most sophisticated home automation project I've ever worked on, Derek said, packing his tools with obvious reluctance to leave his masterpiece. Your guests are going to get the surprise of their lives. Standing in the doorway, I surveyed our handiwork one final time. The villa looked exactly as it always had, peaceful, welcoming, serene. But beneath that familiar surface lay a technological web that would respond to unwelcome visitors with relentless, inescapable intensity. Thank you, Derek. This is absolutely perfect. Derek's laughter echoed across the empty villa as we locked up and headed to our cars. I almost feel sorry for whoever shows up here Sunday. Almost. Sunday, May 4th, the day Kelly had chosen for her final victory. I positioned myself in my study at 2 o'clock sharp. 3 monitors glowing with camera feeds from the villa. The peaceful afternoon at Lake Tahoe looked deceptively serene through the high-definition lenses Derek had installed throughout my property. Birds moved between pine trees. Sunlight sparkled on the lake surface. No hint of the technological web waiting beneath the villa's innocent facade. My phone lay beside the keyboard, its screen showing the home automation app that controlled every system Derek and I had so carefully integrated. Motion sensors armed, audio systems ready, lighting arrays programmed, water controls activated, projection systems loaded with their unsettling choreography. Everything had tested perfectly during our Wednesday completion run. Now came the real performance. At 2:28 p.m., a dark blue minivan appeared on the approach road camera exactly as Kelly had promised. My daughter's punctuality had always been one of her more reliable traits. Useful in school, devastating in manipulation, and perfect for revenge planning. Right on schedule, I murmured, adjusting the monitor angle for optimal viewing. The vehicle pulled into my driveway with casual confidence, as if the occupants owned every stone in the path. Kelly emerged from the passenger side first, her dark hair catching the afternoon light as she stretched and surveyed what she clearly believed was now her family's property. Palmer climbed out from behind the wheel, already moving to help his parents with their luggage. Carl and Margaret Thompson looked exactly as I'd imagined. Retirement-aged, slightly weathered, but moving with the eager anticipation of people who'd just received an unexpected gift. Margaret clutched a large purse and what appeared to be house slippers, ready to make herself comfortable in someone else's home. They gathered at the back of the minivan, unloading suitcases and boxes with the efficiency of a permanent relocation. Not a weekend visit, not a temporary arrangement. A complete takeover of my villa executed with the casual confidence of people who believed their victim was too weak to resist. Kelly pointed toward the front entrance, speaking animatedly to her in-laws. Even through the camera, her body language radiated triumph and authority. Palmer nodded along, occasionally glancing up at the villa's windows, as if mentally cataloging which rooms his parents might prefer. They approached my front door as a unified group, 4 people absolutely certain of their right to claim my property. Margaret walked slightly ahead of the others, her posture suggesting someone prepared to take charge of household arrangements immediately. Then they reached the warning sign. Derek's professionally mounted placard stood prominently beside the entrance. "Welcome to the house of the future. Enter at your own risk." The lettering was clear, the message unmistakable, the warning legally sufficient. Margaret stopped first, her face darkening as she read the sign. Her voice carried clearly through the audio pickup Derek had positioned near the entrance. "What is this nonsense? Who put this ridiculous thing up?" Carl joined her, squinting at the sign with obvious irritation. "Probably some prankster kid." "Just ignore it, Maggie." Kelly's laughter was sharp and dismissive. "Oh, that's just Dad being weird. He probably thought it was funny or something. Don't worry about it at all." Palmer shrugged, already reaching for the door handle. "The old man's always been a little eccentric, right? Let's just get inside." But Margaret wasn't finished. Her face flushed with indignation as she grabbed the sign's mounting bracket and yanked it free from the wall with surprising strength. The professional installation Derek had spent an hour perfecting came apart in seconds, the placard clattering to the ground. "There," Margaret declared, kicking the fallen sign aside. "I won't have some silly warning ruining our first day in our new home," Kelly applauded. "Perfect. You're absolutely right, Margaret. This is your house now." Through my monitors, I watched them step over the destroyed warning sign and approach my front door. 4 people who had just demonstrated complete disrespect for my property, my message, and my right to set boundaries in my own home. Fair warning given. Fair warning rejected with contempt. Palmer inserted the key Kelly had obviously provided, probably copied from the spare I'd trusted her with years ago. The lock turned smoothly, the door swung open, and my daughter led Palmer's parents across the threshold of my villa like a conquering general claiming territory. "Make yourselves completely at home," Kelly announced, her voice echoing through the entryway. "This place is yours now." Margaret's delighted gasp was audible through the speaker system. "Oh, it's even more beautiful inside." "Kelly, I can't believe how easy this was. Some people are just natural pushovers." The motion sensors registered their presence immediately, red indicators lighting up across my monitoring system. 4 targets inside the villa systems armed and responsive, all technological elements ready for activation. I leaned back in my leather chair, finger hovering over the smartphone screen that would begin their education in respect for other people's property. Not yet, let them get comfortable first. 10 o'clock arrived with the precision of a Swiss timepiece. Through the bedroom camera feed, I watched Kelly and Palmer settle into sleep in what they believed was their master bedroom. The guest room monitor showed Carl and Margaret already unconscious, exhausted from their day of claiming my property. Perfect timing for their technological awakening. My finger hovered over the master activation control Derek had programmed into my smartphone. One touch would unleash every system we'd so carefully integrated throughout the villa. Motion sensors, armed audio sequences, loaded projection systems ready. Water controls prepared time for my daughter to understand the difference between a victim and a strategist. I pressed execute. The transformation was instantaneous and magnificent. Every light in the villa began strobing in coordinated patterns. Rapid flashes of red, blue, and white that turned the peaceful bedrooms into disorienting disco environments. Simultaneously, water erupted from every faucet, every shower creating a thunderous symphony of rushing liquid throughout the house. Kelly bolted upright in bed, her silhouette visible against the chaotic lighting. Palmer scrambled beside her, both of them shouting questions that couldn't be heard over the technological assault. Then the voice assistant joined the performance. Attention, unauthorized intrusion detected. The announcement boomed from hidden speakers throughout the villa. You are not the owners of this house. Leave the premises immediately. Through the guest room camera, I watched Carl and Margaret stumble from their bed in terror. Margaret's scream was clearly audible through the audio feed as dancing shadows began projecting across the walls. Ghostly figures that seemed to gesture and move with supernatural purpose. Carl, do something. Margaret's voice cracked with panic. I don't understand what's happening, Carl replied, his words barely audible over the rushing water and strobing lights. The beauty of Derek's programming became apparent as the systems cascaded in perfect coordination. Motion sensors detected their frantic movement between rooms, triggering additional audio warnings and intensifying the visual effects. The more they ran, the more aggressive the house became. Kelly appeared in the hallway camera feed, her hair disheveled, her confident demeanor completely shattered. This is impossible. Houses don't do this. Palmer stumbled behind her, trying to reach what he thought was the main electrical panel. Where's the breaker box? We need to shut this off. But Derek's backup systems were performing flawlessly. Even if they found the electrical panel, the battery systems would maintain operation for days. The villa had become technologically autonomous, responsive only to my remote commands. Warning security protocols activated, the voice assistant announced again. Unauthorized occupants will be removed. Margaret appeared in the living room camera, her face twisted with terror as projector-generated shadows danced around her. This place is haunted. We have to leave. The door-locking sequence activated as Palmer reached the front entrance. Derek had programmed a 30-second delay, not long enough to trap them, but sufficient to create claustrophobic panic. Palmer yanked at the handle frantically. The doors won't open. What kind of system is this? Through my monitors, I watched 4 people who had confidently invaded my property, now reduced to terrified, confused victims of technology they couldn't understand or control. Kelly, who had dismissed me as weak and accommodating, stumbled through strobing lights, while invisible speakers whispered around her. Palmer, who had planned to solve his parents' problems with my villa, couldn't even solve the mystery of a smart lock. The projection systems reached their programmed peak, filling every wall with moving figures that seemed to watch and follow their panicked movements. Combined with the surround sound effects, footsteps, creaking wind that seemed to blow through closed windows, the villa had become a technological haunted house. Carl collapsed into a chair, his face pale in the flashing lights. "We need to get out of here right now." "I'm trying," Palmer shouted back, still struggling with the door controls. Exactly 6 hours after activation began, the automated sequence reached its crescendo. Every system operated simultaneously. Lights, water, sound projections, and voice warnings creating a sensory overload designed to overwhelm any rational thought process. Kelly stood in the center of the living room, turning in circles as shadows danced around her, and water rushed from unseen sources. The confident woman who had ordered me off my own property now looked like a lost child in a technological nightmare. Dawn light began filtering through the windows as the door locks finally disengaged. Palmer yanked the entrance open, and all four of them stumbled toward the exit in complete psychological defeat. My phone began ringing as they reached their minivan. Kelly's name appeared on the display. The phone rang at exactly 7:30, cutting through the peaceful morning silence of my study. Kelly's name
Mira, pero ¿por qué no haces eso? Oye, Diana,
Good morning,
bien. Cuando yo te pago la cosa, siempre me voy a
night?
pedir. Cuando yo te pago la cosa, siempre me voy a pedir. Y la otra vez,
What did you do, you sick,
y es lo
twisted
mismo.
exhaustion. Margaret and Carl are traumatized. They're barely coherent. I adjusted my tone to express gentle confusion. Kelly, what are you talking about? What happened up there? Don't you dare play innocent with me. Each word trembled with rage. The house went completely insane. Lights flashing everywhere. Water pouring from every faucet. Voices screaming at us to leave. Fascinating. Derek's coordination had worked even better than anticipated. That sounds absolutely terrifying, I replied, allowing genuine concern to creep into my voice. Did you call someone for help? We called the police. Kelly's voice cracked. They came out at 6 this morning, searched everything, found nothing wrong. They said it was probably just some kind of technical malfunction. Perfect. The beauty of smart home technology. Completely legal, utterly deniable. Well, that's a relief, I said reasonably. At least you know there wasn't any real danger. Real danger. Kelly's scream was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. We didn't sleep for 8 hours. Carl collapsed twice. Margaret won't stop crying. I made sympathetic clicking sounds. I'm so sorry you had such a frightening experience. These modern electronic systems can be very unpredictable. Stop mocking us. The desperation in her voice was almost musical. This wasn't some random malfunction, and we both know it. Kelly, I'm genuinely concerned about you. You sound extremely stressed. I paused, then added with perfectly calibrated innocence. Maybe the house just doesn't like strangers staying there. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. When Kelly spoke again, her voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper. I know this was you. Somehow, some way, you orchestrated this whole nightmare. Me. I laughed gently. Kelly. I was here in San Diego all night. How could I possibly control systems at the villa from 200 miles away? You're some kind of tech genius now, is that it, actually? Derek was the tech genius, but I saw no reason to enlighten her about my collaborative advantages. Sweetheart, I can barely operate my television remote. You know that. Kelly's breathing grew ragged as she grappled with the impossibilities of proving her suspicions. The police said everything appeared to be functioning normally when they arrived. There you go. Must have been a power surge or something. A power surge that lasted 8 hours that created voices and moving shadows. I allowed a note of gentle concern to enter my voice. Kelly, are you sure you didn't imagine some of these things? Stress can cause hallucinations, you know. Hallucinations, the word exploded from her throat. 4 people had the same hallucinations. Simultaneously. Group hysteria is a documented psychological phenomenon. Kelly's strangled sob was clearly audible through the connection. For 3 years, I'd been the one making desperate phone calls, begging for understanding, receiving dismissive responses. The symmetry was deeply satisfying. "We're never coming back," she declared, trying to inject strength into her shaking voice. "Never. The villa is yours. We don't want anything to do with that cursed place." "That's probably wise," I agreed mildly. "Sometimes houses develop personalities, especially when they feel their boundaries have been violated. You can't get away with this. Somehow we'll prove it was you." "Prove what exactly?" "That you had a bad night involving what the police determined was a technical malfunction." Kelly's silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the hollow quality of complete defeat. "I underestimated you." "You underestimated a lot of things, Kelly. This isn't over." "Actually," I said quietly, "I think it is. You got exactly what you asked for, a night in my villa. I hope the experience was educational." The line went dead. I sat back in my leather chair, setting the phone gently on my desk, beside the still glowing monitors that showed the empty villa. 8 years of construction experience had taught me that the most elegant solutions were often the simplest ones. Kelly had wanted to take my property through psychological manipulation and emotional terrorism. I'd simply return the favor using superior technology and strategic patience. The phone began ringing again almost immediately, Kelly's name on the display. I turned it off. Tuesday morning brought confirmation of my strategic predictions. Through the villa's camera system, I watched Palmer's rental truck pull into the driveway at 10 o'clock sharp, loaded with locksmith equipment and a confident expression that wouldn't last long. From my study in San Diego, I observed him approach the front door with professional tools, clearly believing that changing a few locks would solve their villa problem. The locksmith Palmer had hired looked skeptical even before examining Derek's integrated security system. Within 30 minutes, both men stood scratching their heads in obvious confusion. "These aren't regular locks, sir," the locksmith's voice carried clearly through the audio pickup. "They're integrated smart home systems, biometric scanners, wireless connectivity, backup power supplies." Palmer's face darkened as he studied the sophisticated hardware. "Can't you just replace them anyway?" "Not without reprogramming the entire security network." The locksmith packed his tools with the efficiency of someone eager to leave. "That's way beyond my scope. You'd need a tech specialist who understands home automation systems. And Derek Collins was the only such specialist within 200 miles who had intimate knowledge of this particular installation." I made a mental note to thank him again for his thorough work. Palmer stood alone in my villa's entryway. After the locksmith drove away, his shoulders sagging with the weight of technical defeat. Through the camera, I watched him kick futilely at the doorframe before returning to his truck for the long drive back to San Diego. The rest of my Tuesday passed in pleasant anticipation. Kelly would receive Palmer's failure report around 4 o'clock. By evening, desperation would drive them to my doorstep for a final confrontation. 30 years of managing construction projects had taught me to recognize when opponents realized they were outmaneuvered. 8 o'clock brought the sound of car doors slamming in my driveway. Through the window, I observed Kelly and Palmer approaching my front door with the aggressive posture of people who had exhausted rational options. Kelly's first knock rattled the doorframe. "Open up. We need to talk." I opened the door calmly, noting Kelly's flushed face and Palmer's clenched fists. "Good evening. How was your day? Cut the innocent act." Kelly pushed past me into my entryway. "Palmer couldn't change the locks because you've turned the villa into some kind of high-tech fortress. Smart home security is becoming quite popular," I observed mildly. "Very effective against unauthorized access." Palmer stepped closer, trying to use his height for intimidation. "Either you stop this ridiculous game and give us the villa, or forget you have a daughter." "Is that supposed to be a threat or a promise?" Kelly's eyes blazed with fury. "We'll find a way to prove your guilt in court. We'll sue you for harassment, for emotional distress, for everything. Based on what evidence? A police report that found no illegal activity. You know what you did. Kelly's voice cracked with frustration. Somehow you orchestrated that whole nightmare, and we'll prove it. I leaned against my doorframe, completely relaxed. Prove that you experienced what the police determined was a technical malfunction. Good luck with that. Palmer tried a different approach. Look, Fred, be reasonable. You're old and alone. What do you really need with such a big villa? The exact words Kelly had used during our phone confrontation. They really had no original material. Interesting perspective from people who tried to steal my property without permission. Kelly's control finally snapped completely. Fine. You want to play hardball? You'll never see any grandchildren. When I have kids, they'll never know their grandfather existed. You'll die alone and forgotten, just like Mom. The cruelty of invoking Elizabeth's memory should have wounded me. 3 years ago, it would have sent me into tearful apologies and desperate bargaining. Now it simply confirmed what I'd already concluded about my daughter's character, the same way you forgot to ask permission before giving away my villa. This isn't over. Kelly's voice rose to a shriek. We'll destroy you. We'll ruin your reputation, turn everyone against you. By the time we're finished, you'll wish you'd just given us the villa. Palmer nodded aggressively. She's right. We have friends' connections. We'll make your life miserable. I studied their faces with clinical detachment. Kelly, the daughter I'd raised and sacrificed, for now promising to destroy me, for refusing to surrender my life's work. Palmer, the son-in-law, I'd welcomed into the family, threatening social warfare, because his parents couldn't steal my home. Are you quite finished? Kelly stepped closer, her face twisted with malice. We're just getting started. You have no idea what we're capable of. Actually, I had a very clear idea. Their capabilities extended to psychological manipulation, theft attempts, and vicious personal attacks, but they'd already deployed every weapon in their arsenal, and I remained standing. More importantly, they just provided all the justification I needed for the final solution I'd been contemplating since yesterday's phone call. Well, I said quietly, I suppose we'll see who's more capable. Something in my tone made Palmer step backward. Kelly hesitated, perhaps recognizing that her threats had achieved something she hadn't intended. We're leaving, she announced, trying to regain control of the situation. But this conversation isn't over. Actually, I replied, watching them retreat toward their car. I think it is. I closed the door and walked back to my study, where Elizabeth's photograph waited on my desk. Tomorrow I would make some phone calls. Marcus Chen first, then a few other professional contacts. Kelly thought she understood warfare. She was about to learn the difference between tactics and strategy. Wednesday morning brought the moment I'd been orchestrating since Kelly's first phone call. At 10 o'clock, I sat in Bradley Walsh's conference room, watching my daughter and her accomplices file through the door with the aggressive confidence of people who believed they held winning cards. Bradley, my notary for 15 years, had prepared everything according to my Tuesday night instructions. Legal documents lay spread across the polished table like evidence in a trial, which in many ways this was. Kelly took the chair directly across from me, her jaw set with determination. All right, Dad, we're here to resolve this villa situation once and for all. Palmer positioned himself beside her, arms crossed in what he probably thought was an intimidating pose. Carl and Margaret Thompson settled into chairs along the wall, their expressions mixing hope with lingering trauma from Sunday's technological experience. I appreciate everyone coming, I said calmly. Bradley has some important information to share. Kelly's eyes narrowed, cut the formalities. We want the villa transferred to Palmer's parents immediately. No more games, no more delays. Actually, I replied, I'm afraid that's impossible. Palmer leaned forward aggressively. Nothing's impossible if you just sign the papers. We've been patient long enough. You misunderstand. I gestured to Bradley, who cleared his throat with professional precision. I no longer own the villa. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. Kelly's face began changing color. What exactly does that mean? Palmer demanded. Bradley opened the top folder on his desk. Mr. Martinez transferred ownership of the Lake Tahoe property to the Second Chance Foundation for homeless assistance. The transfer was completed Monday morning and is completely legal. Kelly's voice cracked like breaking glass. That's impossible. You had no right. I had every right to transfer property I owned, I said quietly. Everything is legally documented and irreversible. Palmer's confident posture collapsed. But we had an agreement. Kelly said the villa was ours. Bradley's professional tone never wavered. Mr. Martinez can only transfer property he actually owns. The foundation owns the villa now. Kelly shot to her feet, her chair scraping against the floor. You can't do this to us. We need that villa. You tried to steal it, I observed. This seemed like a more appropriate solution. Margaret Thompson's voice wavered with confusion. What does this mean for us? Where will we live? You'll have to make other arrangements, I said, just as you expected me to do when you tried to evict me from my own property. Kelly's hands trembled as she gripped the table edge. This is just spite, pure revenge. This is justice. I met her eyes steadily, and it's permanent. Palmer's face had gone ashen as the financial implications hit him. Our plans, our future. We counted on that villa to solve our problems. Perhaps you should have asked permission before making those plans. Bradley spread additional documents across the table. The charitable transfer includes a lifetime usage clause for Mr. Martinez as the donor. He retains full access to the property until his death. Then nothing changes for you. Kelly's voice climbed toward hysteria. You still get to use it. Everything changes, I corrected. You no longer have any claim to it, ever. Carl Thompson spoke for the first time, his voice small and confused. So we get nothing after everything. After attempting to steal my property through psychological manipulation and threats, that's correct. Kelly slumped into her chair, the determination fading from her expression as the truth washed over her. When did you accomplish this on a Monday morning right after your encounter with technology? The moment struck her with an overwhelming force. Monday, following the villa incident, yet proceeded
Mira, pero ¿por qué no haces eso?
each breath, each
Mira,
demand,
Diana,
each
Diana.
lost its weight, the instant she recovered.
¿Cuántas veces has dado las cosas siempre me devuelves el dinero?
Making the most of it, right?
This was
Cuando yo
something
te
I
pago las
had
cosas
always
siempre me devuelves el dinero. Y la otra vez, es lo mismo.
and coercion. Kelly gazed at the legal documents, her eyes filled with a mix of apprehension and disbelief, as if they might vanish at any moment under the weight of her scrutiny. The charitable endeavor, isn't that just a clever ruse? Is there a method to keep things in check? Before I had the chance to respond, Bradley spoke up. The Second Chance Foundation is a genuine charitable organization. The transfer is authentic and cannot be undone. So you come out on top, Palmer said with a touch of bitterness. Is that what you were hoping to hear? I wished for silence from all of you. Since you chose to engage in this conflict, I must say I emerge victorious. Kelly's calm facade finally shattered entirely. You've shattered the dreams we once held dear. Palmer's parents find themselves without a place to turn. They are free to roam wherever they please, just not to my villa. Margaret Thompson felt tears welling up her emotions, spilling over in soft, silent sobs. Carl placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, his movements reflecting the confusion of someone who couldn't quite grasp how they had ended up here. Kelly stood on shaky legs, her once assertive demeanor now overshadowed by a profound sense of loss. Let's be honest. We've covered everything that needs to be said. As they made their way to the door, I couldn't help but share one last thought. Is that you, Kelly? She glanced over her shoulder, her expression a blend of weariness and fury. Next time you attempt to influence someone, Keep in mind that practical experience outweighs emotional manipulation. Without fail, the door shut gently, the sound a quiet whisper in the stillness. Bradley and I lingered in a peaceful quiet, enveloped by the legal papers that had just concluded a battle I had never wished to engage in. Expertly orchestrated Fred Bradley remarked at last, 3 decades of navigating construction contracts have instilled in me the importance of having a well-thought-out exit strategy. I collected my copies of the documents and made my way to the door. It's the perfect moment to head up to Lake Tahoe and savor the tranquility of my villa. Thursday morning unveiled a sunrise after 3 long years, a moment I could embrace without the weight of fear, anger, or the need for defensive strategies. I journeyed to Lake Tahoe, traversing California's vibrant spring scenery, awakening a feeling I had nearly lost touch with: quiet satisfaction. The villa embraced me with the stillness of a home that had at last returned to its true owner. I stepped inside my key, turning in the lock without a second thought. I moved through the space unbothered by the echoes of past conflicts, and despite the remnants of turmoil, there was a sense of renewal that enveloped me. My initial endeavor was to bring things back to their former glory. Derek's cameras were dismantled effortlessly, their advanced mounting systems surrendering to simple tools and a resolute intent. Every element of our intricate scheme, motion sensors, voice assistants, projection systems, was meticulously packed into boxes, ready to be returned to my accommodating neighbor. In just a couple of hours, the villa was restored to its original essence. No flashing indicators, no concealed recording devices, no digital safeguards watching for unseen intrusions. A simple house by the lake belonging to a charitable foundation where a man found solace, free from the need to shield himself from his own family. I brewed coffee with the same machine that had observed the turmoil of Sunday, then took my mug to the terrace where Elizabeth and I had enjoyed countless serene mornings together. The lake lay before me, its surface shimmering under the late morning sun, creating patterns that felt alive with potential rather than danger. For the first time since my wife's passing, I found myself sitting in utter stillness. The change seemed to possess an enchanting quality in its entirety. 3 years ago, I found myself a shattered widower, mistaking love for surrender, kindness for frailty, and family loyalty for the acceptance of mistreatment. The man who had risen from humble beginnings to create a vast construction empire had in some way lost sight of how to safeguard his own limits. Elizabeth's voice floated through the haze of memory, now sharper and unclouded by sorrow and deceit. Exercise some patience with Kelly, she had advised. She's navigating through her grief. Yet Elizabeth had never intended for her patience to transform into a lasting state of victimhood. She had never implied that love meant tolerating deceit, control, and emotional torment. The woman who had wed a resolute entrepreneur would never have wished for him to become submissive, not even for the sake of their child. True kindness must be rooted in self-respect, I murmured to the quiet terrace around me. It's merely fragility masquerading as nobility. The towering mountain peaks encircling the lake appeared to silently concur. The essence of nature revealed its own limits. The water remained within its boundaries. The mountains held steadfast to their roots. The seasons flowed in their own unique patterns, untouched by the wishes of humanity. Kelly had dedicated 3 years to exploring my limits, revealing that they could be shifted, erased, or completely overlooked. Every successful maneuver had shown her that love equated to surrender, that familial bonds ensured unrestricted access to all I possessed or achieved. I had shown her that lesson by the way I lived my life. Each check I had penned, every request I had acquiesced to, and every instance I opted for fleeting tranquility instead of enduring dignity, the digital retribution felt gratifying, yet ultimately unwarranted. The true triumph was more straightforward and lasting. Mastering the art of refusal. Discovering that safeguarding my well-being wasn't an act of selfishness, but rather a necessary step towards healing. discovering that certain connections may falter when faced with the reality of true boundaries. For a full 24 hours, my phone sat in silence. No urgent calls from Kelly. There are no dangers posed by Palmer. No frantic efforts to uncover any gaps in the charitable transfer. They had finally grasped the truth of what I had uncovered in Bradley's office. The battle had come to an end, and they found themselves utterly defeated. Yet what truly mattered more than their defeat was my journey to healing. The heartbroken man, who had confused manipulation with affection, was no longer present. In his stead was a man who recognized his own value, who grasped that true compassion demanded resilience, not fragility. Elizabeth would have felt a sense of pride not necessarily in the act of revenge, but in the reclaiming of her own dignity, of the man who had come to understand that safeguarding himself was a profound expression of love, affection for her remembrance, a deep respect for his own worth. A hope lingers that somewhere ahead connections founded on genuine respect could still be waiting for him. The afternoon sun caressed my face as I savored the last sip of my coffee, pondering the intricate equations that define family bonds. Kelly had figured that by combining emotional manipulation with financial pressure, she could secure a lasting hold on my resources. She had never thought that the combination of trauma time and careful planning could lead to a father who ultimately discovered how to safeguard himself. The serene waters of Lake Tahoe mirrored a realization I was at last prepared to embrace. Some conflicts conclude not with harmony, but with the realization that true tranquility often necessitates separation. Some love reveals itself in the form of boundaries instead of complete surrender. After 3 long years, I finally felt a sense of returning to who I truly am.